It's the big one here at the Freestyle Chess in South Africa. We have Magnus Carlsen coming way before time because he is in a must-win situation. He lost his first game to Fabiano Caruana in the quarterfinals, the 30 minutes plus 15 seconds increment one. And now it's the second game. He has to win on demand with the black pieces. Never easy against a player like Fabi. Look at Magnus there focusing. And remember, this is freestyle chess. It means that all the pieces are scrambled on the last rank. And Magnus there trying to focus, trying to not just make sense of the position, pouring himself some water, but also trying to, just get into that fighting spirit mode where he must win on demand. And there you have Fabi coming in, a handshake by him. And what a game Fabi played in the first one to beat Magnus. He was just super accurate. And now, as the players are ready, Fabi actually came and discussed the position with other players. Handshake. And before Caruana makes his first move, let's analyze the position for 1 minute here. So you can see that there's a bishop here, a queen, knight, bishop, knight, rook, king and rook. Now the most natural move here is pawn to c4. Now why do I say so? Because with pawn to c4, it opens up the bishop here and the queen here. The other natural move that makes a lot of sense in this position is the move pawn to b4. Because with that, you actually also open up the bishop in this direction. Now notice that if you want to castle, it's not so easy. You have to first move your knight, then you have to move your rook out, and then play castling here, which could lead to a very decent position. So these are the facets of the position, and now let's go back to the game to understand how Caruana began. Fabi opens the game with pawn to c4. A very logical move, opening up the bishop here and the queen here. And Magnus Carlsen now has a choice between playing the symmetrical move c5 or doing something that really imbalances the position. I think he will choose for the latter with the move b5. And Fabi plays c5, gaining space. This is what you do in freestyle chess. Gain more space. b4 coming up, but Magnus pushes his pawn to b4, doesn't let white take that space. And now he goes pawn to d4. It's also possible to play pawn to e4 here. I guess that's what they were analyzing when they get 10 minutes before the game. d4 played, and now pawn to e6. The idea is that your knight cannot be developed here, so to bring the knight via e7 to maybe g6. And Fabi calmly taking his time here, brings his knight out to d3. Super difficult for Magnus to beat Caruana from such a position. Knight to e7. He brings his knight here, presses the clock. Well, you have a beautiful square on d5, but white will always try to gain space. So maybe black can go f5, and perhaps that fits into the plan really well. Queen c1 is looking in two directions. It's a very cool move. It's a very nice move by Caruana. And actually he's going after the pawn here on b4. And f5 played. Magnus taking a bit of risk, but he feels it that that's logical, and now attacking the pawn on d7. Knight comes out to f6, defending the pawn here, and a very tricky move. The idea is to take, and give a check, and you win the knight. And now bishop c6 makes a lot of sense, because if you take, knight takes, but do you want to trade these pieces? Knight d5 played here, which not only stops this queen e6 business, but also defends the pawn on b4. And Caruana now can go knight to f3, and he has a very good position. He pushes his pawn to c6, and this is dangerous for Magnus, because pawn to c6, and how is Magnus going to react here is the question. Magnus, will he take here? Because take, and b3, that looks good for white, and Magnus must win, so it's not easy. He brings his knight to b6, a fantastic move, sacrificing a pawn, takes here, and now knight to d5, attacking the queen. Magnus playing this beautifully. The queen is attacked, the queen must move away. Now, but where? Queen to b3 forced, right? Yes, queen to b3, and now once again the most important move is d6, and he finds it, and Magnus has managed to find the sort of narrow path to keep an advantage in this position. I mean, not an advantage, keep a fighting position here. What a guy. What a guy. When put under pressure, Magnus actually thought for quite some time and brought out the goods here. Because now it's equal. He's pawn down. That means he has great compensation. White's pieces are a bit stuck up. Get your bishop out to f6. The queen can go to e8. He doesn't even play bishop f6. He goes g5. And Fabiano now plays his pawn to e3. And Magnus goes pawn to g4. Knight comes back to d2 and bishop to g5. Amazing play by Magnus. Amazing. Just literally beautiful how he's coordinating his stuff, threatening to take here and then take here. Just insane. Knight to c4 played. The knights are looking in this direction. And now maybe it's time to just take. Yeah, he takes on a4. Queen takes on a4. And now queen e8 to attack this pawn, because there's no way. Oh, you can defend it with knight a5 though. That's possible. Yeah. You don't want to lose this pawn. Knight a5 makes sense. And knight to a5. Brilliant. What does Magnus do here? He has a tactical shot at hand. He finds it. Knight e3. Because if you take fe, then bishop e3, knight f2, f4 and g3 is coming. What a beautiful sacrifice here. Fabi declines it, plays rook e1. But this means that Magnus has recovered his pawn. And he's so happy here. Because now he can just bring his knight back to d5. Which is what he does. And he can ask Fabi, what's your plan now? Fabi plays b4. So Fabi has a plan actually. Although the knight is beautifully positioned, he wants to play b5 and completely lock up this bishop on a8. Queen goes to g6. Magnus has to go all out for the attack. Yeah, now. Okay, first b5. Let's fix this. Let's fix everything there. No, he first brings his queen in. And he stops f4 because queen takes g4 is hanging. So maybe h5 makes a lot of sense there to defend the g4 pawn. Magnus goes rook to b8. He's playing on both sides of the board. He's putting pressure there. And now it's not so easy to play b5. He plays queen to e2. He's eyeing the e6 pawn. If you take here, rook takes. The e6 pawn is hanging. So first brings his king to f7. And now b5. Oh, smart. Because if rook b5, that is knight e5 check. He does it. Pawn to b5. But that was not the best move. That was not the best move by Fabi, because f4 is coming. Maybe a better idea was perhaps to play pawn to h4. Maybe. But okay. He goes b5. And now Magnus can push f4. He goes h5. Not a good move. f4, queen takes here. Would have been met with rook b5. But now with h5, you have knight c4. With the threat of knight e5, takes knight e5 and you win the queen. It's a big one, because if queen h6, you have slowed down a4 and Fabi is back in the game. He has a big edge here. I mean, a very nice position though for Fabi if he finds knight c4, knight e5 ideas. I mean, it's not game over, but somehow he can get knight c4, h4, knight e3, trade off this knight somehow. And then this structure is going to haunt Magnus because the bishop on a8 is locked. Caruana goes h4 straight away. And Magnus can either take en passant or go back. Bishop h6. He goes back, bishop h6. Once again, knight c4. But he plays a4. It's fine. It's intense here. Very intense. Because Magnus has to win here if he wants to stay in the tournament race. Also, Caruana is the only one who can catch him in this entire Grand Slam. So, if Caruana beats Magnus, he could very well win the entire thing. If Magnus doesn't play well in the next rounds. Okay. First Magnus zooms in and now he plays rook h e8. Brings his rook to e8. Knight to c4, threatening this brutal check on e5. And Carlsen brings his king to g8. He puts his king there and short castling has happened here. He's played his king there, short castling, and maybe now you want to push perhaps the f pawn, but before he can do that, black pushes forward, pawn to f4, and this is already big trouble. I think queen has to be kept on the board, but he goes and trades it. Fabiano forgets that Magnus has this powerful move a6 which just opens up everything. You can't keep this structure anymore. Suddenly things have changed totally. Knight a3 played, but look at the time on the clocks. 1 minute for Caruana, 3 minutes 53 seconds for Magnus. And now AB, bishop c6, bc6 and rook b3 threatened. He takes back. And there you have it, bishop c6. Can Magnus find this? It's a very nice move. It's a very nice move. And the idea is take and a double attack. And Magnus, of course, finds it. A beautiful move. And he's totally winning now. The knight on d5 is an absolute monster. The bishop on a1 is limited. Fabi takes, rook b3. Double attack. And there's nothing that you can do here. He takes on f4. I mean, taking with either of the pieces is a good idea. He takes with the knight. Knight takes f4. And the knight on a3 is hanging. Brings his knight back. What a game this has been by Magnus Carlsen. Just tremendous play. And now he can just put his knight back on the d5 square. But he pushes forward with pawn to d5. And where will Fabi go next with his rook? He goes rook e5. He keeps an eye on this pawn. It's possible to play g3 takes, rook takes g3 here. And bishop g7, rook comes back to e3. And maybe it's time to double up here on the b file. Magnus goes rook b6. He brings his rook back, attacking the c6 pawn. Don't go rook c3 trying to defend here. Knight e2 check and you lose the rook. So he goes pawn to g3. Rook takes c6. Attacks the knight on c2. And if you go knight to b4, I have rook c4. Everything's super well calculated by Magnus. Knight b4 played. And Magnus now, the way he has maintained an edge on the clock is also amazing. Knight a6 played. You can see Caruana. He doesn't emote much, but there are these micro expressions that he has. He's like, I just missed a golden opportunity to knock out Magnus from the tournament race here. Rook a8 attacking the knight. And if knight c7 here, then there's check and then you pick this up. Very smart. Very smart. And the knight is almost trapped. He goes knight c5. But if you see, there are tactics now. Check, rook takes, pawn takes, and you win this bishop here. He goes check, king g2, and pawn to e5. Aha, he didn't even take on c5. He just goes here. And his point is, if you take with the pawn, c5 is hanging. Maybe knight e6 is what you would love to do here. And Caruana goes for it. Knight e6. E takes d4. There's also rook a2. There's rook c2. It's attack here. And yeah, this is, he takes on d4. He goes rook to b3. And rook e8 played. Rook e8. And the idea now is to get the rooks in. Pawn to c5. Takes, king takes. And rook b5 played. He brings his rook to b5. And Magnus is like, I can't play c5 because take, bishop d4 and white is back in the game. That's the only trap that he has to take care of. c6, rook to c5. And now an important move to be found to make sure that he wins the game is rook e4. Otherwise, Fabi almost, tricked Magnus there with this move. And the good news is Magnus has time here to figure this out. Once he has time, I think Magnus can figure out just about any position. Rook e4, he finds it. Rook c1 played. Trying to put this pawn under pressure on c6. Is there some hope for Caruana here? Takes on c5, takes here. Well, he's bringing the king in now. But c6 is falling. He goes king f7. The main point is, if you take on c6, which he does, pawn to d3. You're pushing the d pawn. He finds it. Pawn to d3. Pawn seems unstoppable because if you go rook c1, d2, rook d1, rook e1, and then you win the bishop. So he does play rook. He plays rook c3. And now just rook e2. He takes the pawn. Check. King here. Another check. And you lose the bishop there on a1. But Magnus being very precise. And now chopping this off. Check. King back. And he's going to use his king to try and defend. Like, for example, king g6, a check here, king f5, check here, king e4, and then the king comes in. Check. And he goes up with his king. Well, Fabi can resign here with a clear conscience. There's nothing much to do. I think Magnus was smart to give that check. Otherwise, there were some stalemate tricks that he had to worry about. And now there are no stalemates. So, d2, king f5. And rook to b2. And what's the easiest way to win now is the question. Rook g1, king comes back, and rook to d1. And now the point is, I want to come in, and if there are any checks, I can even block with my rook. That's the point. King g2. He goes king e4. And Fabi now is completely paralyzed. He has hardly any moves left. Rook d2 check will come in later. He resigns. Magnus Carlsen equalizes. And the match goes into tie breaks. What a comeback by Magnus Carlsen. He was almost out of the tournament. Caruana played some incredible chess in game 1. But this one was a pure Magnus masterpiece. He played brilliant chess. And now it will be very difficult to stop him in this tournament.